You are listening to the Lucha Central Podcast Network. And now, Lucha Central Weekly.
Hello and welcome to the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast. This is the podcast that covers news and events happening in the world of Lucha Libre, talking Mexico-based promotions and top independents, along with luchador-related news from throughout the United States. The Lucha Central Weekly Podcast is part of the Lucha Central Podcast Network on luchacentral.com. This podcast and others from the network are also available on all major podcast streaming platforms like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and more. And of course, a special shout out to our streaming partners at thechairshot.com. My name is Miranda Morales, and I'm one of the co-hosts of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast. And let me introduce you to the rest of the team. Introducing first, he is the dashing one, Mr. Dusty Murphy. Dusty, how's it going?
It's going fantastic. How's it going for you, Miranda?
I am doing well, and so well, in fact, I got to bring in the third member of this team, and that's who?
Who?
It is the one and only Breandan Barr.
That's who.
Hey, Dusty, we did it again. We forgot to shout out the chair shot last week.
Yeah.
It's okay. I forget to shout out the chair shot
for Miranda.
We fall apart without you, Miranda. So.
No, not at all. I heard the last week's podcast was great. I unfortunately wasn't able to make it, but I know you two had such a good episode. So good, in fact, it made it to the podcast room charts in Panama, out of all places.
Huh?
Yes.
In Panama.
Top 15, was it wrestling? Was that the category?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
The boss, Kevin Kleinrock, reached out to us and let us know that we made some dents in the Panama streaming market. So you guys are doing something right.
Unexpected. Well, yeah. Because you're still blaming us, even though it's a team effort. I am sure that the Spanish, our Spanish sister podcast has a huge contribution to that as well.
Yes, well, still, you're right. It is a team effort, but a special shout out to our listeners in Panama. Muchísimas gracias. We hope you enjoy the show. And to anyone listening to the podcast, wherever you are, we hope you enjoy this week's show. A lot to pack out. I mean, I would say especially the first part of the show, we got a lot of good pieces of information, some tidbits to share. We are going to be sharing the results of the Pro Wrestling Revolution show that happened this past weekend, as well as some AAA news, big WWE news. I don't know if you've been living under a rock, but a very big announcement made for the Hall of Fame, and also some odds and ends from MLW. So we got the canvas covered this week. It's news. It's good to be back to this format. So let's go ahead, jump in with news of the week with Breandan.
All right. Yeah. So I'm going to start off with a news story that was so big we didn't get to cover it on our interview with Gabe Ramirez because it was so big we couldn't talk about it yet. And that is that Pro Wrestling Revolution is going to be headed down to Jalisco, Mexico on May 28th. Like, that's all we know. Like, that's how hush-hush people are with this information. That's all we know. But you're gonna take as many of those stars down as possible, I'm sure, and then this will be a unique opportunity for many Mexican wrestlers who have not gotten their visas through Masked Republic yet to work with them. So you'll get to see some unique matchups and a really, really interesting card, I guarantee, because that means, if you have some of your regular guys that are at the high end of the card, That means you'll have Dr. Wagner and Jalisco. We have, they've had, Rayo de Jalisco Jr. at the PWR shows. I am speculating madly here, but I just want to add some hype to this because, this is really big and I'm excited for it. So once again, that's going to be May 28th. Keep your ears open. We will give you more details. I'm sure we will have much to talk about in the weeks to come on that one.
Yeah, and make sure you're following Pro Wrestling Revolution on social media, PW Revolution on Instagram and Twitter, I believe. They just released the the graphic of this show, but we anticipate seeing some talent announcements within the next few weeks.
No, everything I said is factual. No, they have worked with all of those wrestlers, but to Miranda's point, we don't know who's going to be there. We don't know the announcements.
We don't know the semantics yet, but there's definitely some betting odds that you could have on there. So, but we'll know more in the coming weeks.
Also, for those of you who have been following the indie circuit attempted return of Daga, he has a knee injury now. Konnan confirmed that on his podcast. So if you were excited to see Daga in the next 4 to 6 weeks, probably don't look for him on the card right now, unfortunately. I never want anybody to languish with an injury, so I wish him a speedy recovery. But he's a strong young man, so I have no doubt that he will be fine with just a mere knee injury. My final news story is one we're just gonna kind of barrel on through. We don't have a lot of details on it, and there's not a lot to be said on it, so we're just gonna go with the facts here. NGD Trios champion, one of the members, Cuatrero, was arrested after a show in Agua Caliente. He's been charged with femicide, which is it's basically attempted murder with gender involved in it. So apparently the accusation is during a dispute with another wrestler that he made some sort of violent action, and there is believed to be intention behind it. It is why the arrest was made. They were originally saying that because he's a wrestler, that this was, they were going for the more aggressive charge of femicide rather than an abuse charge. So that's where we are right now. No action has been taken there. AAA has not made a statement on this yet, so we don't know what their plans are for him going forward with him and his trios partners. And that's what we've got. So we will keep our ears open on that one. But those are the facts as we have it right now. So with that, I'm just going to move us over to the Indie Roundup. We had the Luchadors were out and about last month, and we, for those of you who are keeping track, are waiting for us to do it. We have not finished watching Fantastica Mania yet, so we will give you Fantastica Mania results and opinions. Dusty and I are both trying to watch that, but some of those, some wrestlers were in Germany for WXW's 16 Karat Gold tournament weekend. They had a 3-night event. On the first night, we had Commander against Aries to move ahead in the tournament. So once again, that's the Luchadors fighting each other in the first round. You could have 2 Luchadors in the second round, guys. It's okay. Commander got the win on that one. And then Commander wound up losing the next night against Ahura. And then who was the eventual runner-up for the title. And then that on night 3 instead, we got a trios match, which involved the Frenchadors, Senza Volto and Agel Blanc, and with Commander against Aries, Fuminori Abe, and Trey Miguel. I don't have results for that one. I just had that it was a match, and some people said it was really good. But there you go. That's your 16 karat gold event. But here we go. I'm going to toss this over to Miranda because I know that's what people are waiting for. We've got some results from a really hyped show that we talked about a lot.
Yes, Pro Wrestling Revolution made their return to San Jose this past Saturday, March 11th. Sold out crowd, which was wonderful out the door. So a big thank you to all of the wonderful people in San Jose. It truly is the home of Pro Wrestling Revolution, and to have their first big show of the year back in San Jose was something really, really special. So we gave you the preview a few weeks ago for it, but I wanted to give you kind of a roundup of some of the match results for that show. Let me start off with our trios match. We had the team of the Lucha Horsemen, which was the team of Papo Esco, Necrosis, and I believe it was Vaquero Fantasma, versus the team of Nikki Savage, El Primo Genio, and Diablo Azteca. The Lucha Horsemen came out victorious. We had another matchup. We'll go through. This was the 4-way for the Pro Wrestling Revolution Openweight Championship. Champion Vinny Massaro was in a pretty big fight against 3 other competitors. We had Kukui, Gravity, and Xavion Jr. Now, those fights in the open weight title division are always a show stealer, and Gravity, I have to say, was definitely one of the show stealers in that match, as well as Kukui. Someone who has a bigger stature, but very agile. You can tell where, Gravity trains from, based off of his moveset and his insane strength for someone of kind of more of a linear stature. Yeah. I said, that has Bandito written all over it.
It's like they're related or something.
Yeah, gosh, who knows? But even against those odds, Vinny Massaro won, and he is still your reigning, open weight champion. We also had a 3-way tag team match for the Pro Wrestling Revolution Tag Team Champions. Your previous holders, Los Hermanos Lee, vacated the championship back at the end of December when Dragon Lee officially signed with WWE. So now we had a 3-way to determine your new tag champions. You had the team of Los Elementos, which is the team of Rey Horus and El Viento. We also had Dave Dutra.
Why should you visit thechairshot.com? Thechairshot.com is your home for hard-hitting reviews, news, opinion, and analysis.
And this match was insanely fast and furious.
Because you're smarter than the average fan. Thechairshot.com.
To go that way, but this one in particular was insane.
Hey everyone, it's Denise Salcedo here in Lucha Central with a reminder of where and when to catch all of the great network content this week. Get the full lineup and listen to all of our shows in the podcast network section of luchacentral.com.
I'm pretty sure it was
Tuesdays,
me. I think
Mats and Mayhem takes you inside the world of Lucha Underground as they take you weekly through the series with the benefit of hindsight and the benefit of special guests from the groundbreaking series. Check out the premiere video stream every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern on the Lucha Central YouTube channel and at luchacentral.com. Then listen to it on your favorite podcast platform every Wednesday. Tuesday nights live, it's Wrestle Boss, where Bobby Chulo talks MMA and pro wrestling with special guests and listener call-ins. Visit WrestleBossLive.com Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific to listen live or call in with questions or download the show on podcast platforms on Wednesdays. Wednesday night live on Facebook, it's Spanish show La Mesa de los Margaros, giving you both the news and the cheesemate from around the lucha world. Special guests and a whole lot of fun make it one of the most talked about shows in Mexico. Thursdays, backstage, straight out of the bodega with Papo Esco and PWR promoter Gabriel Ramirez, as they have guests from throughout the wrestling world cool up to give an inside look into their careers. From indie standouts to television superstars, each week brings a new name and perspective. On Friday, it's your double dose of Lucha Central Weekly podcast, one in English y el otro en español. Lucha Central Weekly is where you'll find all the top stories of the week, both inside and out of the ring from Mexico and anywhere luchadores are in action across the globe. Be sure to subscribe and follow all your favorite Lucha Central Network series on your favorite podcast platforms, either by their own series name or subscribe to the Lucha Central Podcast Network show pages to get all of the shows in one easy feed. And please consider giving a rating to help more fans find the shows that you love. For now, this is Denise Salcedo signing off from Lucha Central Central. Have a great week.
I'm still
Lucha-Masks.com by Pro Wrestling Revolution.
Kind of big hoss fight we
had in partnership with Max Republic
versus
the Lucha Brothers, as well as Japanese legend
this one
Ultimo Dragon.
Was going to be a pretty big hoss match.
We had some big moments in that.
There was a moment where a chair was brought in.
Represent your favorite luchador. Get yours now at lucha-masks.com, powered by Pro Wrestling Revolution.
Thank you, as always, to Denise Salcedo, who brings us this week's Lucha Central letting you know what's happening throughout the Lucha Central podcast appearance and come to his family's defense.
Now we're getting into
they have challenged Kratos and possibly Border Patrol for a future match. So the Wagner legacy is kind of running wild through Pro Wrestling Revolution.
If you've been on social media lately,
his name
week at all,
because apparently
you've
I've been
seen
saying
undoubtedly
it wrong for 2
the clip
years now.
of
I
Chessman
can't. You know what though? I don't know if I'm saying it right.
social media personality, Adrian Marcello. It's been on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram Reels. It's been everywhere, quite popular. There's been quite a bit of debate about whether or not it's real.
That could be Galeno.
If you had
that,
any question,
I'd have to double check. I may be missing a syllable in there.
It's the Bat Doctor.
Adrian Marcello.
Yeah, Galeno. I could be missing the L completely. But anyways, that's still a pretty big surprise for the Pro Wrestling Revolution audience. Did not expect that.
But the desk was literally made of styrofoam. You can see it. There's styrofoam
and then
flying
in
through the air
our main event, we had this superstar trios match.
To build an angle. He's a
Dralístico,
very popular celebrity in Monterrey, which is where the first night of Triple Mania is. Also, where Angel Garza
making his first appearance in Pro Wrestling Revolution.
This guy is just a wrestling fan. He's allegedly been through
fantastic
Libre training.
Follow Pro
a lot of
Wrestling
cool
Revolution
stuff going
on
on
social
there,
media.
but do know that it is not
where,
based in
I
reality.
believe it was
This is all the
Dralístico,
storyline building to a Triple Mania
doing
match.
some kind of flip
Makes it
over
no
the
less
top
exciting. Very cool. Adrian Marcello is not much of a star here, but he is wildly popular in Mexico,
and Hijo falling
especially
off of the
in
ramp
the
of the
Monterrey area. And this is going to be kind of a
the
big match.
Make sure you follow Pro
AAA,
Wrestling
a lot of eyes
Revolution on
this.
social media where
So
you
a lot
can see that clip.
so
But
cool spot.
Dralístico getting the win
And exciting that it got so much
in Misterioso.
Yeah.
So I think Dralístico was
but
really,
very clearly
this was his first big
not
match
based
on his back
reality.
from his tour in Japan with Pro Wrestling Noah, and his first match in Pro Wrestling Revolution as a singles competitor since Dragon Lee left. So as we kind of talked about in the conversation with Gabe and in our predictions, this definitely was a standout moment, or we knew this was going to be a standout match for Dralístico, really solidifying himself as a singles competitor. So I see him definitely trying to make a run for the Pro Wrestling Revolution Heavyweight Championship sometime in the near future.
But in terms of influence, he's going to have most of Mexico.
Or the Openweight Championship, really as well too. I just see him kind of going for some of the more, the bigger
generally when
next
they bring
steps.
in a celebrity,
but,
and I don't mean to
again, who
disparage
knows?
that dirty
He's
bastard
truly
Jeff Jarrett, but it's always
a
somebody
big
disappointing like Jeff Jarrett.
headliner within Pro Wrestling Revolution. He's really,
But I will.
I just they've had so many big guys win that title recently.
It's never
it would be
like
pretty
an
phenomenal
actual
to see
big
another
celebrity, and even
smaller,
though this
faster
isn't
guy
an actual big
go up
celebrity
against
to
them
most
and
American
come out on
audiences,
top.
like I say, it's
Putting
fairly
that into the air.
located to the
I know Gabe
Monterey
listens,
area,
but,
or his popularity.
That's not what I'm really trying.
But this is the first kind of big match they've done like that.
Yes, just putting it out into the universe,
exciting.
as they say.
And even though he's not a huge international celebrity, again, sometimes it's more
kind
important.
Of some of the
like
bigger
a hot
news
crowd
coming out
is more
of the Pro Wrestling Revolution show in San Jose.
It
was announced that Pro Wrestling Revolution will return to San Jose in October, so in the later half of the year, and that is just because
this is really exciting
they have
for
a pretty
Chessman
big spring and summer ahead of them. As we talked about, they will be in Mexico in May. The next show coming up fairly soon is going to be in San Francisco. That's April 29th. Again, talent announcements have already been made.
So I wanted to talk a little bit
we have the team of Los Elementos, which is Ray
so Chessman has been
Gravity, including Gravity and Aliento versus the Border Patrol.
To your point,
also
he's an
Commander
old
will be
he's perfect for this because not only are the fans super crazy behind him and almost any angle he does.
Yeah.
But he's done it all. He's done all the crazy stuff. He's done all the sane stuff. He's worked with all the big names. He's never,
much
I won't say never, he's almost never hurt anybody.
Drago
so,
will be there.
Who else can you, this is
Dr.
putting
Wagner Jr.
your celebrities in the hands of the guy that
his return, El Misterioso.
The softest person I can't even think of an American equivalent right now. Like The Miz, I guess.
Cartwheel,
somebody very popular that is going to work safe and sane, but still have the crowd eating
we'll be
out of
talking
his
more
hands.
about that as we get closer to April 29th. Make sure you follow Pro Wrestling Revolution on social media so that you can see all of the updates on that April 29th show and Queen of Indies
and we don't know what the match is going to look like
on May 13th.
So we know,
and I did want to,
based on speculation,
to this large gap in the Bay Area
wrestling dynamics, that there will be a match, but we don't know if it's going to be him.
Over the summer, they tend to do shows in parks and
or
outdoors,
so they will have a stand-in for him.
Oh yeah,
or
they
what?
definitely are. I know there is a weekly event that they go through. I'm trying to remember exactly the name.
Just to take away Chessman's biggest weapon.
I have to look that up, but I know there is a weekly event that they will
the Chessman name has come up. A lot of American fans are running into him first time and not understanding the name.
They are very
this
busy,
is not a character
we're just
that
highlighting
is all
some of
about
the bigger
playing
shows,
the game of chess.
like
the
shows in San
named
Jose,
himself
San
after
Francisco,
a
the show happening in Mexico, Queen of Indies, but they're doing a lot really too with the city of San Jose. They're going to be at events throughout the Bay Area, and you can absolutely see them if you're in the Bay Area.
He's just kind of evolved into a later career, very similar in tone to The Undertaker, although he's not at that level of popularity.
Don't forget, so make sure that you do
The Undertaker was near the end of the
listen
career,
to the Lucha Central Weekly podcast, because we will
very
keep
much
you updated on everything that's happening with independent
formerly a
promotions
supernatural
like
creature, and now he's just this force of
and
fans want
if
him
you
to
are a
hurt
pro
people,
wrestling fan, independent wrestling fan,
you agree with that, Dusty, or do you?
Make sure to get our social media information at the end of the show, because we will be letting you know how to get in contact with us if you want to share any information with us about any independent wrestling promotions, shows, matches. We would love to cover on a future edition of
maybe what the Undertaker was in the 90s.
So
like he has
with that,
vibe
we
to
are going to move on to what time it is. It is time to kick it off to Denise Salcedo, who brings us this week's Lucha
I'm excited
Central
to see this match, maybe more than most of the matches, just because it's a big platform for him. And this is the kind of thing that's going to catch fire on the internet. And the fact that they're trusting Chessman to do it tells me he's going to do something crazy. Like, you got to have a big crazy spot if you're going to go viral with a social media star. Right. So I'm very excited about this. I think it's going to be a heck of an exciting match. Very cool to play out. I can't say enough about how excited I am for this one. Really cool stuff going on for Chessman.
It has the potential to be a show stealer on that card.
It does. And if you watch that clip of Marcelo with Garza, he has like perfect control when he sets him up like he might do the pile driver. And I mean, he has a lot of body control. He's allegedly undergone a lot of training and lucha training, at least.
I have no doubt. I mean, he lives in Monterrey, and there's so many good people that can show him. Because, we talked about this with Jerry Villagrana. Like, if you make it in Monterrey, you can make it in the Mexican scene. So there are so many good trainers up there as a result of that sort of thing.
Yeah, and big night again. That's Triple Mania Monterrey that we're expecting it for. It hasn't been announced yet, but that will be April the 16th. In Monterrey, and presumably that will air on Fight. There hasn't been a whole lot of AAA coverage on Fight lately, but that seems to be one of the main things they're going to cover this year is allegedly the Triple Mania shows, and there was one more that has escaped me. There was a rumor going around, but yeah, the Triple Mania shows are the big shows, April the 16th. Also on that card, we have a 10-man steel cage match with Laredo Kid, Antifaz del Norte, Octagon Jr., Viano 3 Jr., Mystices Jr., Argenis, Aerostar, La Parca Negra, Dralistico, and Taurus. Crazy match. After the match, the final two participants will be in an Apuestas match, mask versus mask.
And,
wow.
Yeah, right. So that's going to be the launching point. Based on those names, it's the launching point for the next level of somebody's career. Somebody's going to take somebody's mask on a Triple Mania, and they are going to be a huge deal as a result of that. And depending on who it is, that also, I mean, that's the one that's got me excited. All those guys. I want to see Taurus in the final. I think that could be a good one for him.
I agree. Very exciting, and he's just so ever present in some of our favorite matches that I think him being in the final guarantees a match of the year contender. I mean, on the big stage like that. And
yeah. If you say, mark our words now. If we're watching that and you see Taurus make it to the final, you're like, okay, here you go, guys. You said he was going to be match of the year. So.
Yeah, very cool. Also on the card, we have a Copa Triple Mania, Team Mexico City versus Team Monterrey. Then we have two tag team matches for the Guerrera de Rivalidades tournament. Blue Demon Jr. and DMT Azul versus Rush and Luchador Sorpresa. And then Penta and Alberto El Patron versus Sam Adonis and Psycho Clown.
So, I don't know if you saw this. I didn't mention this before the show. They did release a poll on who they wanted who the public wants to be Rush's partner. So if the public has their way, it's going to be LA Park.
Ooh.
Okay.
Right. And
does AAA have LA Park a place to smash money?
No.
Because I mean, he's not getting in there for a little bit of money. He's getting in there to get paid.
It's true. That may be why it doesn't happen, but.
Or Rush may be leaving bald.
No, come on, that hair. That hair's not going anywhere.
It's a beautiful head of hair.
It's a beautiful head of hair. That hair's not going anywhere. And that hair is making its rounds in the U.S. So whoever's supposed to lose, they're losing because that hair's not going anywhere. Guarantee. Money back guarantee.
Yeah, great looking card from Monterey. Very cool. Like I say, you can add Chessman versus Adrian Marcelo to that card. It's going to happen. It just hasn't been announced yet. Cool stuff going on. April the 16th. Like I said, not announced for Fight yet, but it'll probably be on Fight.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye out on that, as well as much more news coming out of AAA over the next few weeks. But we got to transition to WWE because we had some huge news coming out of WWE regarding the Hall of Fame, and specifically the first name announced for this year's Hall of Fame ceremony.
Yes. Last week on the most recent SmackDown as we record this, Rey Mysterio was announced as the first inductee into the WWE Hall of Fame. I believe that he's also, aside from like the weekend that Ric Flair was inducted and whatnot, the first active wrestler being inducted into the Hall of Fame. Of course, all that could end at WrestleMania. We haven't seen anything develop much further with the match between him and Dominic for WrestleMania. Again, on Raw this week, Rey Mysterio refused to attack Dominic, refused the match. But Dominic's godfather, Konnan, is going to introduce Rey at the Hall of Fame. And how do you make Rey more mad and get him to fight you than to disrespect him and your godfather at the Hall of Fame? So I predict we will see Dominic act a fool at the Hall of Fame to get the match. I don't know how, but I think that's how it plays out. And very cool for Rey. At this point, Rey Mysterio is like a living legend. I mean, he's like, I don't know who, maybe The Undertaker. I mean, he is a legend in his own time, and people who don't know wrestling or don't love wrestling know who Rey Mysterio is. Yeah. My first experience with the Lucha mask was actually a Rey Mysterio mask, but anytime you wear a Rey, like any kind of Lucha mask, especially during the pandemic when Lucha Dash masks, there we go, was making masks, like anytime people would see it, the number one question I got asked, no matter what mask it was, is that a Rey Mysterio mask?
Yep, all the time.
That's the first thing people said. And so that, like, even people that don't necessarily know the word luchador, they don't understand Lucha Libre, they know who Rey Mysterio is. He just stands out. And he's, I mean, in my opinion, and I've said this before on the show, he is the most important luchador of all time. Santo, obviously, big deal. He came before Rey, but Rey has taken lucha to a global advantage that Santo never had. Santo was huge in Mexico, but Rey is huge everywhere. And
so I have a name that rivals that. I don't think it quite reaches it, but it's just as important in the world of Lucha Libre, and this may tie into what you're talking about because that name is Konnan.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, in terms of global impact, Konnan cannot be understated. And I think what Konnan has, he doesn't necessarily have the ring work that Rey does to make him notable, but he has the booking and backstage expertise. I mean, Lucha Underground would not have happened without Konnan.
Yeah, mm-hmm. He had such a big hand in the 90s Lucha Invasion, and again, like you were talking about, Lucha Underground, and again, as Lucha is resurging in America, he's had his hand in each and every one of those. So while Rey has been the face of it, he's been the backbone of it, and this is more the reason why I think Dom's gonna act the fool, because, like, how do you have two people that are that important to wrestling that have known Dominic forever without having new Dominic just go absolutely crazy?
I am so excited for this pairing. It is a huge deal to have Konnan back at WWE. And to think about Konnan and Rey, like, obviously they've been close, but Konnan has been instrumental in nearly every step of Rey's career. He was hired to WCW before Rey was, and he told them, you got to check out Rey Mysterio. You know, like, people don't really remember it, but when Konnan, who was really like the hip-hop soul of the NWO, they all kind of dressed hip-hop and all that, but it was Konnan who brought that to the group. But Konnan left the NWO defending Rey Mysterio to start the Filthy Animals. So they've been boys even on camera forever. And very close. When Konnan, I guess he wasn't arrested, but he was definitely detained at a Chargers game. Rey Mysterio's there cheesing, taking selfies with Konnan in the background, being hassled by the cops. Like, these guys are just so close, and I'm so excited to see it. And the way they can work together, knowing each other, trusting each other so totally, I think that this could really be magic. I also think, based on Konnan being at the Hall of Fame, him being Dominic's godfather, I think we see Konnan at WrestleMania. I would be surprised if we don't see Konnan at WrestleMania. And I would also be a little surprised if we don't see him turn on Rey, join Dominic. Be pretty interesting.
They have the background for that to happen, too. You alluded to something, though, that I want to swing back around for, because you just casually dropped in there. Rey might retire, so let's bring up what you think the apuesta is going to be, because it's clearly going to be an apuesta.
I absolutely think that it's going to be career versus career, because what has Dominic got to put on the line?
Hair?
His
I don't
girlfriend?
know.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll do that. I don't know.
I don't think Angie'd let him have Rhea, even if he wanted. So.
That's the most valuable thing he's got. Let's be honest.
It's true. And so I think we see career versus career.
I think so, and I think the mask will get involved in that.
I do too. I think it all plays into it. I think that it's maybe who is the true Rey Mysterio, or who is the true, because Rey Mysterio is a title, not just a name. People always assume that's his name, and they always call him Rey. But Rey Mysterio is King of Mysteries, so it's a title.
And then he is junior. He is the second person to hold the Rey Mysterio. Well, actually, there's been more than that. There's been a couple other people that had it briefly.
Yeah, there's Rey Mysterio Jr. And there's a lot that goes on. And the spelling is different now. When Rey Mysterio was in WCW, it was M-I Mysterio in the Spanish spelling. Now it's M-Y. And that was part of the deal with the Lucha Commission to get his mask back after he was unmasked WCW. Okay. He spells the name differently now. It's technically a different character. And I also found out in researching that one time that Rey Mysterio's character is supposed to be a falcon.
Yes.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that makes sense.
That's what the birds on the side of his mask are. Yeah.
Just very cool. And like I say, Rey Mysterio, undoubtedly the most important luchador of all time. I first saw Rey Mysterio wrestle in the middle of the night on a 17-inch TV in ECW in like 1995, having one of those wild matches with Psychosis.
Those matches with any of the luchador matches in ECW, for those of you who haven't taken the time to do it, are so worth the effort. It doesn't matter which one you pick, doesn't matter which combination of luchadors you get. However, Rey Mysterio versus Psychosis happens multiple times, and every one of them is magical.
And those matches are so important to modern wrestling as we know it. There would be no Seth Rollins or, some of those bigger aerial guys. All of that started with what you saw in ECW back in those Lucha Libre matches. There was just so much going on.
To even a bigger point, there would be no Místico. There would be none of that high-flying stuff that's happening in Mexico, and Mexico is synonymous for, even though that's not all of what Lucha offers.
No, and that's the other thing. These matches were what made that synonymous with Lucha Libre. The idea that Lucha Libre is flippy stuff, like smaller guys doing real flippy aerial matches, that started in ECW with Rey and Psychosis.
Oh no, I just made a connection that hurt my soul. without Rey Mysterio and Psychosis, there would be no Young Bucks.
It's true.
Well,
though.
yeah, 6 degrees of separation.
Oh.
It's like the Velvet Underground. They say that, only, what is it, 10,000 people bought the first Velvet Underground album, but of those 10,000 people, 5,000 started a band. Well, maybe only 10,000 people saw Rey Mysterio versus Psychosis on ECW the first time, but 5,000 of those people went on to become wrestlers. I mean, you have to think about the inspiration. And it was the first time I had ever seen wrestling like that, or Lucha Libre, period. And it was very groundbreaking and just so fresh and exciting. And Rey Mysterio had been putting on matches like that for years by the time he got to ECW. And he's still putting matches on like that. He has completely robotic bionic knees now. He's had them operated.
He's not human anymore.
So many times. He's had the stem cells. He looks amazing. Rey Mysterio is so cut and muscled and just looks fabulous. And he's still putting on high caliber, amazing matches this many years later. 28 years later, and it's crazy.
He's still doing things that inspire people, to be honest.
Well, and then, go ahead.
Finish your thought. I'll come back for mine.
I was just going to touch on his inspiration. He doesn't just inspire people in the ring. He inspires people. My son always refers to Rey Mysterio as the hero of his childhood. He was like a real life superhero, and he always looked up to Rey Mysterio and wanted to be like Rey Mysterio. And so Rey Mysterio is a very big deal at our house because of that. But that inspiration, all those kids that were young then and saw him have grown up with Rey Mysterio, and it's such a big deal. And now that he's in the Hall of Fame, it's really a huge, huge deal that can't be understated.
So I've got to ask now, because this was the point I was going to make anyway. Was those matches you and your son were watching? Was that when he was going through the Giant Killer phase, and when he beat GBL for the title and all of that? Yeah. Yeah, he was super inspirational. It's the tiny guy that managed to beat the biggest guys in the WWE and do the things that nobody in the WWE had done before, because they'd all been Hulk Hogan looking guys before. 6 foot, giant muscles, 6 foot plus in many cases.
Yeah. And to see a guy, if you haven't seen Rey in person, he's not very tall. And so for him to do things like beat JBL in less than 30 seconds at WrestleMania, be world heavyweight champion. He did some crazy things in that run, and he made it seem like anything was possible. The sky was the limit. You could do anything, and kids latched on to that. Mm-hmm. And I know that John Cena, Roman Reigns sold a lot of merch, but when you figure long-term merch and all those masks that Rey Mysterio sold.
Yep.
Unfortunately, a lot of that can't be tracked because Mexico, that's where a lot of the masks are made. But I guarantee you that for however many T-shirts and hats John Cena has out there, there are at least that many Rey Mysterio masks.
You can see it in any of the Mexico matches. Anytime you see footage from Arena Mexico or any of the AAA ones, Rey Mysterio masks are just littered throughout the audience. You can consistently see Rey Mysterio masks. You can throw a rock into the audience and you'll probably hit one. Don't throw rocks into the audience. So the part about that, him being inspirational to the kids in WWE, though, I just wanted to point out was a huge shift in his character. So he has the thing that a lot of legendary wrestlers have now. He's had multiple iterations of Rey Mysterio that have kept him relevant to each generation. So now you have fans like you, where you can remember seeing him in ECW, and your son can remember seeing him in WWE. He's doing entirely different matches with entirely different storytelling. But you can both bond over the fact that you both love the matches that he's done, and that's a rare thing even for legendary wrestlers in Mexico. There's not a lot of those people that have had that impact on people. So we cannot understate just how important he is, and we all started this with how important he is for the Hall of Fame. the WWE Hall of Fame, but at some point he's going to be as celebrated in Mexico as Santo, I guarantee it.
Absolutely. And like I say, I feel his global impact is much more important than Santo's. Santo was just the first.
Well, yeah, which is important, but you're right. It's a much bigger hill to climb to be as important after the first. So,
yeah.
Well, I mean, it's you both have covered so much of it. I think too, having this storyline right now, as well, just adds more, drama to it. I think it's slowly becoming to, the second most popular storyline in WWE. I think it's also been a great way to incorporate Legado del Fantasma, which, I think was an uphill battle.
Yes.
But this storyline has really done so. I mean, between the induction ceremony and what will happen there to what may happen at WrestleMania, there's still a lot to be seen, but it will, as someone mentioned, I think they're letting it breathe. They're letting moments of the story, be a little bit more fluid, but also not cramming everything into a month's time.
Right. And it's a similar thing they're doing.
Let it breathe. So overall,
Sorry. On my end, you had gone quiet. I apologize. And it's a similar thing, though, is what I was going to what they're doing with the other big storyline you're talking about, which of course is Roman Reigns, but that's not Lucha, so we don't need to talk. But they're doing the same thing. It's a sign of success that they're learning to do it. Sorry, continue on with your thoughts.
No, that's all. So, we will continue to, keep our eyes in particular on the story as well as the news, that comes out regarding the Hall of Fame ceremony. I also, just one of the little aspects of it, just the location of it being in California. And, it's not San Diego, but, Ray is synonymous with California.
Far. It's not far.
No, it's not far, but,
you
there's
can get there.
LA and San Diego are very different places,
Yeah.
But still, I think too, it's a big homage to, the influence and impact he's had in California. So, again, very interested to see what happens, when we'll officially get a WrestleMania match, what his induction will look like, and so much more. So make sure that you stay tuned to the Lucha Central Weekly podcast, where we're going to be sharing much more about our thoughts and opinions of this and everything on the road to WrestleMania. Now, before we head towards the end of the show, I want to do an impromptu NXT plug, because we haven't had NXT in quite some time, but as we are recording this episode, NXT is airing right now, and one thing I did see as far as pictures and clips of was Dragon Lee making his first appearance on NXT with a very brief interview. And so it is very exciting for me to have a Lucha influence once again on NXT. I hope to see
since
that.
You mentioned, sorry. Since you mentioned that, he did make his NXT in-ring debut at a house show.
He did, yes. He did make his house show debut back this Saturday as well. So it's kind of interesting to see the two Hermanos Lees on literally different sides of the U.S. And pretty, pivotal matches on the single side. But yeah, he wrestled who we known as Carl Fredericks, which I think is a very, very good choice of competitors for his first match in NXT. So who knows, maybe in the upcoming weeks we'll finally be bringing NXT conversation back to the show as we start talking about Dragon Lee. So
we will.
We will. But what I am going to be finishing off with is MLW, Major League Wrestling. It has been a few weeks since we've talked about it. So really just some cliff notes of some things that have been happening with Major League Wrestling. specifically highlighting some things that happened on their February 28th show. For one, we had your MLW middleweight champion Lince Dorado team up with Microman. They defeated the team of Mini Abismo Negro and Delirious. So Microman still making some really big waves, and I mean, especially his spots with Mini Abismo Negro. Again, Mini Abismo is, much taller than Microman.
Everybody's much taller than Microman.
Yes. But still also on that shorter stature side. So he's a really good dance partner for Microman. And Microman actually getting the win with a roll-up on Mini Abismo Negro. So he continues. Go ahead.
My brain is still wrapping around this. Abismo Negro and Delirious?
And Delirious, yes.
What a team.
Yes.
What a wacky, wild team that I never knew I needed in my life.
Yeah. But now you know. Now you know. Also happening, or that did happen on the February 28th edition of Major League Wrestling Underground, John Hennigan, as we all known between Johnny Mundo, Johnny Mercury, Johnny Impact, Johnny Hardy at one time, whatever the last name is, he is now being known as John Hennigan, defeated Davey Richards to become the new MLW Openweight Champion. And this was caused by a distraction of the referee when Cesar Duran came onto the apron. Taya and came in to hit Davey in the back of the head with her women's championship, and that allowed John to get the pin on Davey Richards. Now, if you've seen some pictures, you do know that Cesar Duran, Taya, John Hennigan, and now Sam Adonis are all part of this Azteca faction. So not so much any Azteca Underground, no separate show it looks like, but we now have Cesar Duran more leading this faction of lucha libre wrestlers. Now, one thing it is interesting that I didn't say, I mean, they're all luchadors in their respective rights, but more of the American or North American influence than actual luchadors or those from Mexico or from other parts of the world. So kind of an interesting aspect there. But that's where we see Caesar's presence now. So no longer in matchmaking, really now the leader of this faction. Now we don't know if we'll have more wrestlers as part of this faction. I think a lot remains to be seen, but again, this is kind of a different direction from what we had kind of anticipated or had thought about for Azteca Underground. Other news coming out of MLW War Chamber is slated for April 6th. Already announced for that show, we will have John Hennigan, the MLW Openweight Champion, face Jacob Fatu. Taya Valkyrie will be defending her Women's World Featherweight Championship versus Delmi Exo. And Willie Mack will be facing Real One. So those have been some of the lucha adjacent matches that have been announced so far for War Chamber. So you have two champions. Sam Adonis, I know, will probably be keeping his eye out for a championship at some point. But also a pretty, dangerous, group, of very experienced, very talented wrestlers.
Uh-huh. I had a fantasy booking moment when you were talking about connecting the dots that they're lucha adjacent, but most of them are Mexican. What if we get a more noble group of luchadors to be their counterpart? So that's not Mexican lucha, this is, and you start bringing some of the, I don't know who's still on the current roster, like your Rey Oruses or somebody to the.
Yeah. Well, for sure you have Lince.
Yes. Oh, yes. The most interesting of luchadors.
Yeah, you have, of course, Microman with a very, very big, even a small stature, big influence. Who may be able to combat, say, some of the treachery of Cesar Duran.
Yes.
Yes, he may be balancing that out. You're right. The MLW roster, especially now, is in a very fluid state, it looks like. They're bringing in lots of new people, but also they don't tend to be the type to, outside of a few announcements, mention when people are leaving or have left. A lot of it is usually after the fact. They tend to announce when people are signed or coming in, but that is one thing that MLW does a little differently. I would say their roster is a lot more fluid, so it is a little bit harder to know exactly who is signed or who is actively working with them and who isn't. So but I do think that would be a very interesting storyline to have, another set of luchadors stand up to Cesar Duran and his group, but still have a very great lucha match.
You just made this super easy for me to sneak in with this. While we're talking about we don't know who's under contract, that's one of the other things that came up with the Konnan signing. Is there was serious talk because of MLW's still active lawsuit against WWE that an MLW wrestler would not be allowed on WWE programming. And yet here we have Konnan being announced. So either they made an exception or Konnan is not currently under a MLW contract. So that was just Lucha Blog was the one that initially put those dots together, but I just wanted to make sure we had that on here because I thought it was an interesting little tidbit, especially since we were just talking about contract negotiations.
Yeah, that's also another good point too about, who is working behind the scenes. Because there's been a lot of change recently, it does kind of make sense to believe that Konnan's no longer there. We've seen the shift away from Azteca Underground and Cesar Duran's role. We've seen shifts in other storylines. Even the focus on some talent, the return of others. I mean, we even talked a little bit about Ari's enemies about a month ago and their status and, the curiosity of, are they signed, are they not? I mean, apparently yes still, but that, not being utilized.
That was the issue with that particular one was they were being held in that contract and wanting to get out, and nobody on the MLW side is willing to comment on that whatsoever, to your point about them talking less about being released and more as opposed to when people are signed. They made a big deal when they were signed. Now they want out, and they're not talking about those two. They're not using them. They were signed to do a bunch of matches, and they haven't done a bunch of shows, and they haven't done any of those shows, so... just your little refresher on that because we still want an answer to that, MLW. Yeah. I don't know if you're listening, but we want answers to that. We'd like to know what's happening with our favorite luchadors.
Yes, we'd love to. But we will, of course, keep you posted with more that we hear from NXT, MLW, AAA, WWE, AEW, and much, much more. So make sure you stay tuned to future episodes of the Lucha Central Weekly podcast, which is available on luchacentral.com. But, of course, that's not all that's available on luchacentral.com. Brendan, can you let our listeners know what else they can find on luchacentral.com?
Absolutely. So if you haven't visited luchacentral.com yet, it really is time to do it. Luchacentral.com is your online home for Lucha Libre, where you can get all of the top news in English and in Spanish. You can find the best curated video content and original content not seen anywhere else. Find when Lucha Libre events will be happening in your area. Find photo galleries from top photographers covering Lucha Libre around the world. It's a place to have your voices heard, from weekly polls to annual awards, seen and read by top executives in all of the major Lucha Libre promotions across the globe. And here we go. It's still free. So you can't beat that price ever. Free, free, free. Visit luchacentral.com. Your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre.
And while you're at it, don't forget to follow Lucha Central on social media at Lucha Central on Facebook and Instagram and at luchacentral.com. You can also check out Lucha Central's YouTube page where you're going to find hours upon hours of content like previous episodes of the Lucha Central Weekly podcast in English and in Espanol, as well as other podcasts from the Lucha Central Podcast Network, interviews, matches, and other content you're not going to find anywhere else. And well, if you want to, go ahead and follow us on social media. Dusty, can you let our listeners know where they can find you?
Yes, I am on Instagram at Dusty Murphy, and I am on Facebook at facebook.com/Dusty Murphy.
And Breandan, can you let our listeners know where they can find you?
Yes, I am 321 T-shirt guy. That's the numbers 321. And then T-shirt guy is all spelled out. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, and I'm all over the Twitters.
And me, Miranda Morales, you can find me at the hashtag Miranda, hashtag spelled out on Instagram and Facebook, no Twitter. But go ahead and go bother Breandan or Dusty on Twitter. Mainly Breandan. He's the Twitter aficionado on there. So go ahead. But follow us. If you are a pro wrestling promotion, wrestler, referee, announcer, fan, photographer, and you'd like to share with us information about Lucha Libre matches and promotions happening elsewhere, please reach out to us. We would love to feature them on a future edition of the Indie Roundup. We love learning about Lucha Libre in all forms, in all locations, all throughout the U.S. So please feel free to reach out to us on social media or on Lucha Central social media, so we can talk about it more. Also, if you are listening to us on your favorite podcast streaming platform like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. Subscribe so that way you get notifications each and every time a new episode drops. Leave us a 5-star rating and feel free to put your review in the format. So with that, that is all for us this week. Thank you again all so much for listening. For Breandan Barr and Dusty Murphy, I'm Miranda Morales. Thank you and have a great week, and we'll do this again next time.